now is starting to throw the right hand to the uppercut, but he has got Holmgren to the ice.
Sometimes, you try to psych the other team out, intimidate them before they even get in the locker room. And, when the Flyers were coming up, I knew exactly when they were coming up. I had the stick boy telling me, just run up and tell me as soon as you see the bus pull in. So he run up and tell me. By that time, I already did like sets of 40 push-ups. I taped my wrists, my arms were all pumped up, and I grab a stick and go outside with my, hacksaw there, and I hacksaw, but I was all pumped up, and you could see the Flyers coming right by me, and they're looking at me going, and you could hear them going, oh man, we got to play against him tonight. So it's always kind of trying to play mind games and always, trying to get the better of the other team, even if it's little. If you could, get them off their guard a little, it's always, intimidation is a big factor in the game, in any sport.
Who's the toughest guy you fought that went on to be in the NHL as like an NHL tough guy, like sort of legendary status?
Nick Fotiu.
Oh, okay, Fotiu.
Oh, yeah, Nicky was tough.
Staten Island legend.
Yeah, Nicky was tough. We had 2 fights, 2 rounds. He won the first one, I got the second one, and every time there was a brawl, he'd look at me, I'd look at him, he'd go one way, I'd go the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you had to face a Golden Gloves boxing champion on NHL ice? Nick Fotiu grew up in Staten Island, sitting in the cheapest blue seats at Madison Square Garden, dreaming of one day wearing a Rangers jersey. He did not start skating until he was 15 years old. People called him crazy. But that same boy became the most feared enforcer in Rangers history, combining the precision of a trained boxer with the toughness of a street fighter, forged in New York. Even the most violent team in the league, the Broad Street Bullies of the Philadelphia Flyers, were genuinely afraid when facing him. And in part 4 of this video, you will hear a shocking confession from the most dangerous man in NHL history. To understand why Nick Fotiu was different from every other enforcer in the league, you have to go back to April 1st, 1979. The Philadelphia Flyers were hosting the New York Rangers at the Spectrum, a building so hostile to visiting teams that players genuinely dreaded walking into it. This was the home of the Broad Street Bullies, and the crowd expected blood. That night, Fotiu squared off against Bane Wilson, a young and ferociously aggressive defenseman who was being groomed as the next great intimidator on the Flyers roster. Wilson was big, strong, and hungry to make a name for himself. But what happened next was not the kind of chaotic brawl that hockey fans were used to seeing. Instead of grabbing and wrestling, the 2 men created space between themselves and began exchanging punches with the discipline and footwork of professional boxers. Commentators at the time could barely believe what they were watching. Fotiu landed a right hook that sent Wilson's helmet flying across the ice. He then followed with a combination of straight punches and hooks that left Wilson completely disoriented and nearly knocked him down on the spot. There was no luck involved. This was the product of hundreds of hours inside a boxing gym, transferred with full force onto an NHL rink. The broadcasting crew that night captured the moment perfectly. One commentator said, "This is really a fight, not a brawl. Look at those hooks from Fotiu. They look like they are fighting under Marquess of Queensberry rules tonight. A big right from Fotiu. Wilson is trying to hold on, but Nick is completely in control." Do not go anywhere. In part 4, I will tell you about the shocking confession of the most dangerous man ever to wear a Philadelphia Flyers jersey. April 9th, 1981, NHL playoffs. The New York Rangers were facing the Los Angeles Kings in California. Nick Fotiu had no business being involved that night. He was serving an 8-game suspension from an earlier incident in Detroit. He was sitting near the bench in a tailored suit with a walking cast on his leg. Then everything broke loose. A massive brawl erupted on the ice. An aggressive Kings fan leaned over the glass and went after Rangers player Eddie Hospodar. Security was not fast enough. Fotiu did not think twice. Still in his suit and cast, he pushed through the crowd, grabbed the man by the throat with both hands, and shook him like he weighed absolutely nothing. He then forced his way toward the Kings bench to confront backup goaltender Paul Pajot, who had also entered the chaos. The two teams combined for 229 penalty minutes in that period alone, setting an NHL playoff record that still stands today. Broadcaster Bill Chadwick, a former NHL official, said live on air, "I have been in this league a long, long time, and I have never seen anything worse than this." His teammate Chris Katsopoulos said, "Nicky came out of the stands with that cast on his leg and grabbed that fan by the throat. He never let his teammates stand alone." This is the moment we promised you at the beginning of the video. Dave Schultz was not just a tough player. He was the architect of fear in the NHL. As the enforcer and spiritual leader of the Philadelphia Flyers during the 1970s, Schultz set a single-season penalty minutes record that still stands today. Opposing players lost sleep before games, knowing they might have to deal with him. Coaches built strategies around avoiding him. He was, by every measure, the most feared man in the league. And yet, in his own autobiography titled The Hammer, Schultz made a confession that shook the hockey world. He wrote that throughout his entire career, there were only two men he was genuinely afraid to fight. One was Clark Gillies of the New York Islanders. The other was Nick Fotiu. What made Fotiu so different was not raw size or aggression. It was the stillness. While most players visibly tensed or hesitated when Schultz approached, Fotiu remained completely calm, hands ready, eyes locked in. He carried the composure of a man who had trained for exactly this moment inside a boxing gym, and Schultz knew it. That calm was more threatening than any amount of shouting or posturing. Schultz was quoted as saying, "Nick Fotiu was the one man I was afraid to fight during my NHL career. These guys were too big and strong, and Nick also knew how to punch like a professional." Phil Esposito, one of the greatest players of that era, put it simply in his own memoir. "Nick was the reason I could play safely. When Nick stepped onto the ice, the opponents suddenly became much more polite." Every enforcer in NHL history had size. Many had aggression. But what separated Nick Fotiu from all of them was something that could not be measured in pounds or penalty minutes. It was will. Fotiu did not grow up inside a hockey program. He did not have a coach pushing him onto the ice at age 5. He picked up skating for the first time at 15 years old, an age when most future professionals already had a decade of experience behind them. When he told people in Staten Island that he was going to play for the New York Rangers, they did not encourage him. They laughed. He responded by doing something that most people would not last a week attempting. Every single day, he made a journey that took 3 hours each way, traveling from Staten Island across the Verrazano Bridge into Brooklyn, taking the subway to Queens, and then boarding a bus out to Long Island, just to get a few hours on the ice. That relentless commitment eventually brought him to the hockey school run by Rangers legend Rod Gilbert, who recognized something in the young man that training alone could not explain. Gilbert recalled, "I remember very clearly the hunger in his eyes at my hockey school. We had to teach Nick how to skate from the most basic movements, but his fighting spirit and determination were something he was born with. Nobody could have taught him that." Fotiu himself said it plainly. "People said I was crazy, but I knew I could do it. I just needed time and hard work." The 5 stories you have just heard all took place on the ice. But the truth is, Nick Fotiu's presence was felt long before the puck dropped. Inside the Rangers locker room, Fotiu was known as one of the most notorious practical jokers the team had ever seen. And nobody suffered more consistently than Pierre LaRouche, a talented forward with a reputation for never running out of things to say. On one occasion, Fotiu quietly filled cream-filled donuts with shaving cream and offered them to LaRouche, who enthusiastically bit into one and continued talking at full volume while foam began spilling out of his mouth across the locker room floor. What this story reveals is a different kind of power. An opponent can prepare for a fighter. Nobody can prepare for someone they cannot predict. His teammates loved him and stayed alert around him at the same time, never quite sure when their turn would come. Fotiu laughed, recalling the moment. Pierre had the biggest mouth I ever knew. Watching him spray shaving cream all over the locker room while still trying to tell a story is one of my happiest memories. You need humor to survive in this world. Over 646 NHL games, he accumulated 1,362 penalty minutes. Yet he was never just a fighter. He contributed 60 goals and 77 assists for a total of 137 points throughout his NHL career. Hockey journalist John Halligan described Fotiu's physical makeup in terms that went beyond ordinary toughness. Nick's hands were so hard that he could catch a baseball thrown at full speed without a glove. That is not just strength. That is a different biological structure, built to absorb impact. Do you think Fotiu was the toughest player in NHL history? Leave your answer in the comments below, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one.